Talking landscape photography with Fletcher and Carwyn.
It is the Lightminded podcast with myself, Carwyn, and Christian Fletcher. Christian, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Carwyn. How are you, mate?
Very, very well. A little bit cold today, but mate, this is Lightminded. Let's have fun.
Yeah. Well, let's do it. I'll be a little bit shivery during this, and I'll probably stutter, and my words will be a little bit slurred because I'm sitting in a tin box, which is my office. It's a sea container that I've converted, and it has insulation, but it still must be. It's colder inside than it is out, I would say. It's a good refrigerator, so I can put all my frozen stuff in here and be fine.
Okay, I've got to ask you: are you a closet doomsday prepper? Like, what's the deal with the shipping container?
Yeah. Well, look, I think maybe I will go out and buy 60 kilograms of rice and 300 cans of baked beans
and some guns
to live on. But I don't know how secure it is because I have a hard time locking the door. Most of the time, it doesn't seem to want to lock in. There's a lot of glass, so it's anyone could break in, and I don't think it's shockproof. So any nuclear explosions or whatever will not keep me safe. So definitely not a prepper, I don't think. But it's a great little man cave. So I'm happy with that. I've got a dye sub printer in here where I can make all my dye sub stuff, infused aluminiums and coasters and t-shirts and all that. I've got a little heat press and also got some gym gear so I can work on my guns. Just want to beef up, and there's a few photographers out there that like to wear shirts with no sleeves and show off their guns, and that's my aim, to be a photographer with big guns.
How are you, legends?
You're referring to Peter Lick by any chance?
No. There's a few other guys I know that do the same thing.
We've got to lay off here. You got your phase one in there, Christian?
I do. I have it. Yeah, it's in a box at my feet as we speak. Actually, in a nice little Pelican case. Actually, I just mentioned that the sea container is never locked. I can't lock it, and I have a phase one in it.
We'll just correct that. The sea container is always locked.
It is always locked. That's right.
Mate, during the week, Huawei copped some bad press about its amazing zoom, and you're actually featured in an ABC article online about it. Mate, is it really that awesome? Like, it can zoom in to the point where it could almost read people's minds?
Well, I think it possibly is. I mean, the videos that I've seen do indicate that it is excellent. I mean, you can't believe anything you see online, but there was one test that they did with, I think it was an iPhone next to the Huawei, and they zoomed in and they zoomed in and they zoomed in, and it was incredible. And I've noticed in the specs of the P30 Pro that they've got the stabilization has been added, which I'm not sure if it has on the P20 Pro, which is what I've got. With that one, you can zoom into 10 times and it gets really shaky. So I think they might have worked on that and made that much better.
Just some other news coming through, and I don't know over what period this is, but Canon have taken a 20% hit on their DSLR market. So these sort of, camera phones are being taken pretty seriously now.
Yeah. It was interesting news to read that. And I can understand it. Especially DSLR is one thing, but all their little compact cameras that they used to make, or I'm not sure if they still make them, but they would definitely be the ones that you would not buy, because now you've got a phone, the Huawei, that does have this amazing zoom capability on it, and that is a bit of that's why people bought the compact cameras in the past, is because they could zoom in with them. They want a camera that does everything, that has a wide angle and has a long zoom, and those little compacts sort of fit that little niche. So I think now with this camera having a 5 times optical zoom, and they've got a 10 times hybrid zoom, and of course then the 50 times zoom, which is just is nuts. And obviously, yes, if you get online and look at the videos, you'll see that this thing is pretty incredible.
Now I'm just having a look at the specs here, and we don't unfortunately have one of these to play with, but am I reading this correctly? 40 megapixels?
Yep, it's a 40 megapixel camera. It's got a quad sensor, and it's equivalent to about 27 mil in 35 mil terms. And now it's got a fixed aperture of f1.6, which in the P20 Pro was 1.8. So they've opened it up a little bit, so it's obviously going to let more light in. And of course that camera is also optically stabilized. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. The other thing that they've got is they've got a RYYB sensor, not a RGB sensor. So that is supposed to capture color better and all that. So they're working on all these little technologies to make this thing even more impressive. And look, I haven't got it yet. I am saving up for one right now. And my wife said I have to sell a few things before I buy more toys. And I got a vintage bike that I want to sell. Really nice. Actually, if anyone's listening, let me know if you want to buy my vintage bike. Go to our web. What's our email address there, Carwyn?
Well, it's lightminded617@gmail.com if you want to buy Christian's bike.
Yeah.
And actually, we'll put it on our Instagram too, which is
I've got some nice photos of it. Yeah. They were shot up with the what they shoot it with. I think I shot it with the Sigma, but I've got this really nice Jimbai lighting system that I bought from Team Digital, and so really nicely photographed against a black background. So yeah, it looks pretty smick. It's just, it'll walk out the door. As soon as someone sees it, they'll buy it.
How much do you want for it?
Then I can get the Huawei. Then we can be experts.
How much do you want for it?
I think $900. I think.
Oh, that's too cheap. We're going to stick that on our Instagram page, which is 3 words: Lightminded Podcast. If you want to buy Christian's bike, it's been well cared for and well photographed.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's all been restored, so it's hardly been ridden. It's pretty much brand new paint job, all cleaned up and polished, but it's all got nice chrome. Anyway, we're talking about photography, not bikes, aren't we?
Yeah, sorry. Mate, where is this all going? Is this going to produce present some problems for the likes of iPhone and Samsung?
Yeah, well, look, I think Apple personally have dropped the ball on a lot of their products. They've dumbed them down for the lowest common denominator. I think they make their products they're supposed to be easy for the average user, and they've forgotten about the pro in my mind anyway. And with the iPhone, it should have the best camera. They've always been leaders in all these things, but then Huawei has come out and they've taken the lead, and they've got the Leica lenses in these cameras, and they've just taken it to a new level. And as a professional photographer, I love the idea of having a camera with me at all times. And the P20 Pro it's amazing, man. I had my exhibition that I held in my gallery this week. It's still on at the moment. It's another week to go. And one of the photos that sold was shot on the Huawei, and no one would ever know that it was not shot on a camera of DSLR or mirrorless or phase one. It was that good. Mind you, it wasn't massive. It was 17.5 inches squared, but you couldn't tell. It was amazing. So I've got something in my pocket that I could use to make money if and when I need it.
I'm just shaking my head at that. That's amazing. What about the workflow?
Well, if you approach it the same way you would approach using any other camera, and stabilizer, all that sort of stuff, you've got all the automatic controls that you can turn off. So you can work on your ISO and your shutter speed. The aperture is fixed, which is fine, but you have exposure compensation dials there as well, so you can underexpose, overexpose if you want, and you've also got manual focus or autofocus, so you can actually select the focus and do all that. So look, I was down in Denmark a couple of weeks ago, and I just had my tripod with me, and I had the phone. So it was early morning. I thought, well, bugger it, I'll just take the tripod, set it up as normal, and just rest the camera on the tripod just to try and keep it a little bit more stable. Yeah. And I was blown away by how accurate I could get those shots and how sharp they were. And interestingly enough, I was down there with my mate, and his son had just bought a Canon outfit, which is probably why Canon have had a 20% drop in sales. But we compared the two photos. I was standing next to him. We were taking the same shot. And my mate said, let's just have a look, mate. Let's see how good this bloody Huawei is. Let's have it. Let's put it up against a real camera. So he got his son's photo, and we got my photo from the Huawei, and it just blew it away. It was like, oh boy! And at that point, I think he said, because I did originally say, because his son wanted to buy this camera, I said, look, just get him the phone. You can use it as a phone, and you can take great photos with it. It's amazing what it can do. And I think at that point he went, oh, okay, maybe that was a good advice, because it seriously was sharper than that was shot with the Canon. Now, it wasn't a high-end Canon, but you'd expect it to be something to be fairly close. And I think the reality was that the Huawei had more resolution as well. So I've made prints from the P30 Pro that have gone to 30 by 40 inches, and that's the native resolution. I haven't blown it up. If you take the if you print at 180 ppi, so you're just spreading the pixels out, you're not really blowing it up. That's what we do whenever we haven't got enough resolution. So 180 ppi, you've got a 40 by 30 inch print out of that camera, and I've got one that's hanging in the gallery, and it's stunning. It's amazing how good it is. So this is where it's at, and this is what is happening with the camera companies. They are basically not being able to compete with these phone companies.
5 years' time, what's the camera landscape going to look like?
Oh, that's yeah. Oh, look, I think there's that camera called the Light. Have you seen that? It's got lots of little cameras, and it's also got lots of little phone camera sensors, and they combine them all together using software algorithms, and they create these larger files from getting data from all these little sensors. So I'm figuring that they'll get to a point where you don't need a DSLR, you don't need a mirrorless, you just need your phone with this tiny little camera. You'll get, we're getting it now, we've got it now. So just think in years to come, it'll just be refined, and you'll get better quality images, and that's what everyone will do. It'll change everything. I mean, the photography industry is changing now. It's getting harder and harder as a professional to maintain what we were used to and what we used to get, because people are getting their phones, they're taking photographs that actually come out quite good. They've got software on the phones that they can edit their photos straight away, and then they can send them off to a lab to get printed on the fly. They don't need to come to my gallery and buy one of my pictures. They can print their own. And a friend of mine is a framer. He's saying he's getting a lot of people coming in with their own phones, with their own photos that they've taken on a phone, and he prints them and frames them. So it's just a change in the whole thing in regard to galleries and selling photographs and being relevant. And so, it's just another industry that's going to be disrupted.
Now, we were recently joined by Loud Nordbergen Maestro from Phase One. Unfortunately, his surname is impossible to pronounce, but look, he's a lovely bloke. Did you guys talk about smartphones? Like, do Phase have anything up their sleeves that you heard of?
Well, yeah, we did actually, and he said they can't compete with that sort of thing. There's these big companies, and the technology that's coming in camera phones, cameras in phones, is progressing, and they're leading the market, because they've got the money to put into this technology. The sensors are really small, so they're cheaper to make, and they can waste them, and they can do all sorts of things. So Phase One will never compete on that market. What Phase One do best is create really high resolution digital backs and lenses and bodies that match them, and create ultimately the best files you'll ever get, period. I mean, no camera can do, no phone can do what a Phase One can do. So they don't even try to go down that way. But it's interesting that he talked about how these companies are leading the way with technology and sensor technology and all these sort of things. I mean, you think about what Huawei's night mode that they have on their cameras, and how you can handhold the phone at night time, pointed at a scene that is relatively dark, and take a series of shots, and it stitches them all together and lines them perfectly, and you get no camera shake. It's unbelievable that they can do that, and the photos are amazing. The quality, the detail, and those modes, the resolution is always a little bit lower. Yeah, but they still might be 20 megapixels, which is still it's pretty decent. So I think in the future, the phones will do everything. You won't have problems with noise or light. It will just shoot in anything. And I was reading about the new P30 Pro can get a well-exposed image down to light levels of 1 lux.
Right.
So to put that in perspective, you enter a room that's got a window. The light entering through that window, lighting that room, is equivalent to about 1,000 lux. So you can imagine. I mean, 1 lux is pretty much black. It's dark. You can imagine. So pretty interesting times.
Time for the top 3 tips to be sure.
I reckon you could say that again, mate. We just couldn't understand your accent.
Time for the top 3 tips.
Oh, I love that voiceover. Okay, Christian, mate, it's starting to sound like an ad for Huawei. And if Huawei are listening, we'll happily test out the P30 Pro. What do you reckon?
I'd love to. I mean, like I said, I am saving up for one now, but you never know if they thought that we were worthy, we could definitely take some photos with it. And actually, I've got some photos from my P20 Pro that I'll put up on the Instagram page. So people, and the one that I've hanging in the gallery at the moment, I'll put that up so people get an idea of the quality from these cameras. But yeah, look, if they happen to be listening, fantastic.
Yeah, we'll happily test them for you. Okay, it's time for the top 3 tips. What are your top 3 tips for shooting with a smartphone?
Okay, well, the first tip would be approach it like you're approaching photography with any other camera. So, you know, it's all about if the light isn't that great, you need to think about stability. Are you going to be able to handhold this thing and get an accurate shot? So, yeah, so you would shoot it just like you shoot with any other camera. The other thing is turn off the automatic settings. And the third one would be with the Huawei or any of the other phones, if there's a pro setting that allows you to shoot and capture in RAW, that's the one that you want to use. So with the P20 Pro, I go to the Pro mode on the thing, and I can set it to capture RAW information. And that RAW file is a DNG file, and then I can open that up in Capture One and do my editing there and move on. So that, I think, being able to have the ability to really get the most out of the files you want to shoot in RAW. And when you capture with the P20 Pro, and I'm assuming it's exactly the same with the P30 Pro, in RAW, it also gives you a JPEG. So you have the 2 files next to each other, so it shoots JPEG and RAW. And you can, when you preview the photo on the camera, the JPEG looks better. The RAW doesn't look, it looks a bit weird, it's a bit flat, and it looks to be quite vignetted. So obviously the JPEG has got some adjustments that are going on to the file when you take it, and that's happening in the phone. The best thing about the RAW is that you have the option afterwards. It's like shooting RAW on any other camera, you've got the option in the RAW software to make the changes that you want to make, not the changes that the phone is going to make for you, which is most of the time not as good.
So it's one of those things you could work on it in Lightroom or Capture One as well?
Yeah, it's a DNG file. So any RAW processor that can read DNG files. And look, it's really simple. I take the photos. It's just like a hard drive. I plug it into my my Mac, and I can see the photos there, and I just export the ones I want to a folder, and away we go. It's that easy.
Actually, we should have a talk about image processing, because we've got Julianne Cost is going to be joining us in a week or so for a podcast. Yeah,
Julianne is amazing Photoshop evangelist for Adobe, and she has so much knowledge. She teaches all over the world, and is probably the funniest lady I've ever met, and probably one of the best presenters I've ever come across. She is absolutely had a swear. I was with her on a workshop in New Zealand. That's where I met her, and she had everybody in stitches. She's got this really dry humour, and she made every subject that she talked about funny. I don't know how she does it, but she's just amazing. So I'm so looking forward to catching up with her and having her on the podcast. So she's pretty keen, and a great person to listen to.
And look, if you've got any questions for Julianne, who's basically the god of Lightroom and Photoshop, just send us an email. Our email address is lightminded617@gmail.com, and we will pose your question to Julianne personally.
Yeah, and actually she's the goddess.
Goddess.
Yeah. Yeah, she's the goddess. And I think her presentations are as much stand-up comedy as they are factual and interesting information about how to use these programs better. So yeah, that's going to be great. But so we're kicking some goals, and look, I've had some conversations with other people about coming on the podcast, and we've also looks like we're going to get Ray Martin to come on fairly soon.
Wow.
And Ray is a really crazy keen photographer.
And he's got great hair.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? He's always... So he's going to come on, and he's he's obviously been, everyone knows Ray Martin. But I remember reading a story about him, and he was saying that he wishes that he had a camera when he was interviewing all those people, because he's interviewed like the Pope and all the presidents, all these amazing people. And he said if he only had his camera, he would have these photos now, these memories of all these people that he'd spoken to in the past. So, but yeah, now he's very, very committed to photography, and it'd be nice to hear about his story and his photographic story anyway.
I believe with Ray, he's been taken under the wing a little bit by Ken Duncan.
They've been good mates. And actually, the first time I met Ray was actually up at Carragini, and Ken was there with a group, and Ray was there with the group as well. And I got to meet him then, and so him and Ken hang out a fair bit. And I'm catching up with him and a bunch of other photographers for the Aperture conference, which is coming up. June 22nd and 23rd in Sydney. Cool. So that's something for the listeners to have a thought about, see whether they want to come along to that. There's going to be 6 speakers from all different types of photography, and all talking about their journey and all that sort of stuff, and where they come from, where they're going, how they did it. And it's an inspirational session.
All right, some very exciting times ahead. We've spoken today about the future of smartphones. Christian wants to sell his bike, only $900, and we're going to stick a photo of that up on our Instagram, which is 3 words, Lightminded Podcast. If you'd like to send us a question to ask the goddess, Julianne Cost, anything about Lightroom or Photoshop, just send us an email to lightminded617@gmail.com. Christian, mate, thanks for your time again today, mate. It's been awesome.
Yeah, pleasure, Carwyn. Yep, I'm going to go thaw out now. There's some sunlight coming through the window. I'm going to stick myself in it and soak up some rays. But yeah, thanks, Carwyn. Good talking as always, mate. We'll talk again next week.
Talking landscape photography with Christian Fletcher.